like, share, subscribe. Y'all see I got plenty of good content for y'all to watch. Listen, my views low because I'm new to this or whatever. But listen, watch my content. I'm telling you, it's gonna be very informative and very straight to the actual point, right? So now, and also, if you want a reading from me, listen, the best place to find me is Inferno Rex or my Instagram, Rex Kane with two N's, or my TikTok, Revelation Kane, right? But it's some fake ones now. Make sure that you see that it's me, right? So now, listen, if you want a birth chart reading, go on, come holler at me. Listen, I got plenty of reviews. I got plenty of different prices. I got plenty of different reviews. Hold up, I just clicked on this. Hold up. It's going all slow. There you go. There you go. For those y'all that want to know my actual prices, listen, $40 for the general birth chart reading, right? $30 for the general for kids, and so on and so forth, right? 50 for the soul, 50 for the draconic, 25 for the life path, this life path number, right? Look at this, 50 for the nakshatra, 60 parent-child disagreements to understanding. What they're reading is basically me showing you how you can better help your kids, right? So that y'all relationship can be more solid than not in the future, right? So now, spiritual astral therapy, I do that, 50 for an hour, 25 for one. Where y'all can clearly see. So now, and listen, like I said, you can come over here. I got plenty of reviews, plenty of reviews. But now, so let's go ahead and talk about the actual meat of the actual live, right? So now, in my last video, this is part 2 to the actual crazy moon trans. So moon trans and mayhem, go watch that one, right? Should be a picture with the matter of fact, look. Let me see. Should be this one right here. Yeah, the moon mayhem. Yes, go watch that video. So now, but we finna be talking about part 2. So now I have some typed up, right? But before we go to look what I got typed up, so now the reason I'm doing this because I want you all to really understand and see how serious one transit could probably potentially destroy something that should be long lasting or long term inside of your life, right? You have to 100% understand that. The thing about it is, so now these transits come in certain houses, right? They aspect certain planets, right? You see what I'm saying? Or certain planets aspect them, right? And what it does is it creates a unique type of combination of energy. Sometimes bad and sometimes amazing, right? However, I am going to be talking about the more negative traits, the more negative aspects, right? Because why? Because most people are going through it and they want to know why. And my whole theme is trying to really get you to understand how these planets are truly affecting us from a societal level and especially a personal level as far as you, the individual, right? So now, with that being said, right, what you have to understand is that these transits are temporary, right? But the thing about it is what you do under those certain transits, being influenced by those certain energies that are temporary, sometimes you can often make permanent decisions, right? Some decisions you can't undo, right? You see what I'm saying? So now let's go ahead and get right into it. So now, first point, right? So now this is one of the things that can happen regarding bad relationships during moon transit, right? Sometimes people can really end up ending a relationship off of how they've been feeling for like 2.5 days. Remember, the moon stayed in a certain zodiac sign for like 2.5 days, right? So let me read it for you. So now you're not feeling them, you're feeling the wound, right? So now when the moon is getting attacked, right, by like Mars, Saturn, Rahu, basically the malefic planets, right? It warps your actual vibe. You understand that? It's like, okay, now the energy kind of seem a little bit off, right? Because you got to remember the mind, the emotional aspect, and not just the emotional aspect, but the perception based aspect is getting influenced by these more aggressive planets like Mars, Saturn, and Rahu, right? So now, the thing about it is, so now Mars is more anger, right? Saturn is more pessimism, and Rahu is more explosion, right? And I'm gonna do a video on each one of the planets as well, too, so y'all can really understand that. So now, the thing about it is, you could potentially stop seeing your partner as a source of love, and you might start seeing them like, you know what I'm saying, they the reason why you're hurting, right? So you can end up saying stuff like this: they don't understand me. But the truth is, you really triggered. But the thing about it is, you don't understand why you triggered, right? So let's say, for instance, let me give you a bad placement, right? Now, some people say, well, I don't see every placement as bad. I'm not saying every placement is bad, and yes, we do have bad placements. The planets in astrology reflects the reality, right? In reality, everything's not always good and sunshine, right? And so if the planets reflect reality, then there are bad aspects, right? So I'm just covering the real raw truth though. I'm not finna just give you no just 100% fairy tale. I'm not finna do that. I'm finna really give you the actual truth. So when your ass go out there and you really need some understanding, you will be able to figure these things out on your actual own, right? Because now you have a clear understanding that sometimes it's really not just you, and a lot of times you really can't just do anything about what somebody else is doing or going through. You have to either try to help them as much as you can, but learn back off when it's time and just really understand them and let them grow and evolve, right? If we don't really understand this, a lot of times we get mad people not doing certain things we want, they're not fitting the mold or how we want them to be. So the thing about it is, the way I teach astrology, I really want you to understand, not just from this video, but from all the videos, that hey, listen, there's a certain way to operate that can be more beneficial, right? So now, the thing about it is, you got to remember, so you might be bleeding out on people emotionally, but you're going to be blaming them like they stabbed you, right? Because you got to remember, let's say, for instance, if your moon, I like to use Aries because Aries is just so easy to use, right? So let's say your moon, right, is in yo. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. No, I'm trying to think. 'Cause certain moon transits. Let's say this. Let's look at it like this, right? So the moon stay in the zodiac sign for 2.5 days, right? So let's say, for instance, you have Saturn inside of Aries, right? And remember, the moon, boom, it gets to Aries, right? The 0 degree Aries margin, right? So you got to remember, but check this out. You got Saturn inside of Aries, right? Let's say you got Saturn inside of Aries in the seventh house. Yeah, let's say that, right? So now Saturn is the place. I mean, the seventh house is the place where Saturn really wants to be at, right? But now it's in Aries. It's debilitated, right? That means because Saturn is exalted in Libra, showing you that Saturn's truth is about it's about balance and fairness and equality, right? But since it's going in the zodiac sign, it's directly opposite to actually Libra. Now it's going into Aries, that's more selfish, right? So what you got to understand, right? Now, let's say you got Saturn inside Aries, but the moon is, like I said, at 0 degree Aries mark. You got almost 2.5 days for this to go, right? What could it possibly happen, right? You could be easily angered, right? Saturn also rules karmic things, right? And Saturn rules like this certain past type energy, right? So you got to remember, you could probably end up bringing up past things, right? That you probably like remember he or she said something to you that was wrong, and then you got to remember now the moon is trans in the Aries with that Saturn. Saturn is about concrete things. The Aries is about action, right? So now, How do we look at that when the mind's involved? So now the mind is being centered around past memories of something that was kind of harsh, right? And it could also be depending on where Mars is. It could also be because Mars controls the Aries, right? Why your moon is there because ultimately that's where trans in there. Thing about it is you take the selfishness aspect and the individual and action prone aspect of Aries, you merge it with the mental and emotional thing. You got me, so it's already making the person probably quick temper, right? Then you put it with the Saturnian influence, right? That's Saturnian influence of what? Restriction, right? You see what I'm saying? Restriction, pessimism, doubt, right? Memories of something that they feel like, okay, maybe I didn't. You could be looking at, I'm gonna give you an example. Somebody could have cheated on you. You took them back because they apologized. But when it's certain moon transit, now you're ready to leave them because you remember all the certain stuff they did to you. Now you bring it up to them. Now you fighting whatever. Then boom. Or even if they didn't cheat on you, maybe they probably said something to you a couple of months ago that you probably feel like it's triggering you now all of a sudden, right? Then after that 2.5 day period is over, now you back to kumbaya. Now you back to peace. But now you got to remember that 2.5 period the moon was transiting your Saturn in Aries in the actual seventh house, right? You see what I'm saying? Like for real, for real. The thing, and what you got to understand is this: it might be transiting your seventh house. You know what I'm talking about? But what if they a Capricorn ascendant? They get Aries in the fourth house, right? You see what I'm saying? So now the fourth house rules in Vedic astrology over happiness and peace of mind. So, but now you're bringing that Saturnian influence because the moon in your seventh house is being fused with Saturn, right? So you got to remember if we look at it from a synastry aspect, you got to remember what you're bringing to his or her life in the actual moment, right? Is that Martian, Saturnian, moon energy right into that person's if they're a Capricorn ascendants, fourth house of emotional peace and well-being, right? So off top, you already can kind of see what I'm pinpointing to. So you're bringing, you know what I'm talking about, like discomfort into the physical home. The fourth house rules that, and also the emotional happiness, right? You see what I'm saying? So in turn, if they moon is in the fourth house regularly, you know what I'm talking about. No. If the moon trans in their fourth house, guess what? They might be ready to get ready to leave you, right? Because you gotta remember, Aries is still a cardinal energy. What is that? That's a transitory energy, right? They mean like a zodiac sign that represents changing, right? You see what I'm saying? That's why the four cardinal signs rule over like changing of seasons, right? Showing you this it's a transitory energy. So so they got a transitory energy in their fourth house of you mental peace and happiness. And now you bringing all this Saturn and Moon shit, right? Oh man, they probably finna get ready to leave you. And then guess what? After that 2.5 day period, both of y'all probably, you know what I'm saying, did something that y'all didn't really want to do. And guess what? Sometimes the breakup can be resolved, right? Y'all might get back together, realize, okay, I was acting rash, you were acting rash, but I don't really feel like that. I was feeling like that a couple days ago, but my mind clear, y'all to talk, and then boom, yeah, y'all back together. You see how y'all making up and breaking up, right? A lot of times it has to do with these transits. I'm telling you that. Scroll down to number two, right? Oh look. Scroll down to number two, right? So now you snap over little things, then blame them for the explosion. Small stuff starts to feel unbearable. A tone in their voice, right? A delay in texting back, them not showing up the way you expected. You know what I'm talking about? Suddenly you're like, why am I even in this relationship, right? Now, the reason why I'm doing everything with Aries energy is because Aries in its most worst traits is complete selfishness, right? Real talk, right? And when it comes to relationship, a lot of time relationships end because of not lack of communication or extreme selfishness, right? He want me to do this, but he don't want to do this back. She want me to do this, but she don't want to do this back. You see what I'm saying? Unequality. It's just a lot of selfishness go on in a lot of modern day relationships, right? That's so using the negative traits of Aries. Now you can say, but Cain, any zodiac sign can be that. Yes, any zodiac sign can be that, but I'm using the Aries energy for example because of the archetype of what it is in a certain house it rules, right? In a traditional zodiac. Aries rules over the first house, which represents the individual, right? And as a zodiacal sign, you got to remember its most positive traits are leadership oriented, warrior prone, but its most negative traits, since it rules over that one vibratory energy, it's going to be extreme selfishness, right? It is very, very low end, right? So now a small tone in their voice, right? So you got to remember, Moon and Aries, you can click fast. Moon Scorpio might be a little bit more patient, right? You know what I'm saying? Depending on where Mars is, because if let's say for instance, you got Scorpio in the seventh house, right? Let's say if you got Saturn and Scorpio in the seventh house, still in the enemy sign, right? But it's in a good house, right? You see what I'm saying? And Moon come on through there. Scorpio rule what? The natural energy of Scorpio was transformation, right? And then you got to remember, it's also a watery energy, right? So what you have to understand, and then a lot of people don't know this either. Saturn is an airy planet. People are like, hold up, what? Saturn, airy planet? Because you don't understand the mutual cone of what Saturn is and represents, right? It's really the Aquarius energy is the true representation of what Saturn is really actually about, right? But we ain't gonna even get into that right now. That's some more deeper, higher Vedic principle things, right? So let's say Venus, your moon is in Scorpio inside your seventh house, right? No. Let's say Saturn is inside Scorpio in your seventh house, right? And the moon get in Scorpio. Now the moon is at a certain degree in Scorpio. Now the moon is debilitated, right? And it's with Saturn. Oh man, listen. Let me tell you something. Scorpio is a real deep thinker, and this could be a person that might take like the tone of their voice, delay in texting. Right? You got to remember, Scorpio is a psychological, analytical sign. Now they're gonna think something up. This is person cheating on me. This person backstabbing me because Scorpio energy can be highly prone to extreme. You know what I'm talking about? Extreme forms of paranoia because they can end up believing everybody out to get them, right? Real talking. You can end up calling, yo, people, I feel like, yeah, she doing this behind my back or whatever. It's a lot of stuff that can go on. These transits can really happen to us like that, right? I'm just keeping it above. So now, but it's not about them, right? It's the moon in crisis, making your attachment system malfunction. You understand that? So now, so check this out. So what you got to understand is this. Now, listen. So now, you ghost to walk away thinking it's power, but it's just pain, right? So the moon under fire makes detachment feel like a win, right? So I'll leave before they actually hurt me. A lot of people do this, right? They feel like things probably already about to end. Let me just go and go so I can be fine. A lot of people really do this child stuff, but they don't know what they being kind of guided by, right? So now you convince yourself that you're setting boundaries, but really you're self-sabotaging because you feel unsafe emotionally, right? So you go cold, you pull away, you leave someone who's actually there for you, and later you might realize you just destroyed something over a temporary wave, right? And that's what I want y'all to really understand. So now, think about it. The moon is transiting on for 2.5 days. The reason I'm targeting the seventh house of relationships because it's the seventh house of relationships, right? And the reason I keep including Saturn is because you got to remember Saturn is an enemy to the moon inside of Vedic astrology, right? So this is the thing, right? So you got to remember when those two things are coming together in specific houses or specific signs, and the reason I'm choosing Aries and Scorpio is because those are more Martian-based signs, right? And what do I mean by Martian? They're ruled by Mars, correct? But the thing about it is Mars energy is a very action-prone energy, right? And then Mars also has that volatile energy, right? Make you get up and just do some shit fast, right? That's why I'm really trying to use that in combination to show you, like with certain planetary influences, yeah, because like it's like Venus. You got Saturn and Taurus and this moon transit come. You might it might not it might affect you, but not as much. You know what I'm talking about? As it would for like somebody with these more temper prone type of zodiac signs, right? Because Taurus was it's about it's a calming energy until it's lit all the way up, right? And then Taurus is still a fixed sign. So when Taurus in the seventh house of relationships, depending on where Venus is at, you got to remember this can make you fix and completely tied to whoever you are actually with, right? Meaning that you can hold on even when sometimes when it's time to let go, right? So that's what I want people to understand that when it comes to these transits, you have to understand it's not a game, right? But it really helps if you're wary of it, right? How many times have you all been in a relationship where you said, "Man, I think I'm ready to end it with this man. I think I'm ready to end it with this woman." Then a couple days later, you like, "I don't feel like that no more." Y'all, you gotta, but see, the thing about it is, this where really get y'all. This is why I'm focusing on the moon, right? Because the moon is the thoughts and the emotions and the perceptional aspect of who we are, right? So doing these transits, especially if they go into like just hard house, like the 12th house, 6th house, 8th house, right? We call these the stunner houses in astrology, in Vedic astrology, house of hardships. Your mind could even be clouded with these negative and bad aspects of a person. And so you could probably really be feeling like, man, I'm not feeling this person. They done did this, did that. And the things you feeling might be very, very true, right? But the reason why they're resurfacing is because of a certain transit. Because what if you get into it with your partner and they be like, why you bringing up stuff that we didn't got over with now? You see what I'm saying? They don't know and you don't know, but you think you know because in your mind you rationalize like, because you don't understand that you're kind of being guided. You know what I'm talking about? By a certain external planetary influence, and that's what kind of ends up happening. You like, and so now you thinking everything that you feel is 100% real, and it is to a certain extent. But just, and what you're talking about might be a very real thing, but the thing about it is, a lot of times you probably really only addressing it and really, really harping on it is because of certain transit placements, right? And the moon isn't the only placement. Certain transit to the fourth house, certain transit to the eighth house, 12th house can do similar things, right? Why do I say that? Because you got to remember a lot of people don't understand this, but the fourth house in Vedic astrology is the house of emotional happiness, right? Then the eighth house is the house of psychological nature, right? Then the 12th house is subconscious nature. All three of these houses have to do with certain aspects of the actual mind, right? So the thing about it is, if they are negatively damaged, then what you got to think, then that can happen in your actual relationship the same exact way. You see what I'm saying? During these certain transit periods. And I think that's what the true real issue is. So that's what I really want people to understand is when it comes to these transits and relationships, listen, don't get it twisted, right? Because something that you want so bad and think that was so solid, you see how so many now. What if now this is the real harsh part, right? This is the real harsh part. What if you end a relationship that you in them 2.5 days, then after 2.5 days you don't be feeling like that anymore, right? In your mind, you like I ended it, but in your partner's mind, they in that mud like, man, damn, you did me wrong. And especially if y'all have a habit of fighting, breaking up back and forth, breaking up back and forth, a certain transit aspect in your birth chart and they birth chart could manifest, externally in two different ways. Now this person like, you know what, I'm tired of this shit. I don't want to deal with you at all anymore. And this is a 2.5 day cycle, whole time. So you need to broke up with a person that you really didn't want to break up with long term, right? You just felt it really, really hardcore in those after 2.5 days when the moon's transited in them certain bad, angled houses with certain bad planetary influences. Yeah, so yeah, it's very, very serious when it comes to these transits, right? And a lot of times, so sometimes it can be very subtle influences. Not every transit is going to be just like life changing thing, right? It's transits happening all like every 2.5 days regarding the moon, and mostly the world around you remains unchanged, right? So it's not like it's going to always be some dramatic thing. However, it could be when it actually hits certain points in your birth chart for you, right? So it may not affect everybody else at the time. May affect you this month, may affect your partner a couple months, may affect your mama next year. You never know because depending on where it's angled at, and they charts with other planetary aspects and influences. Oh yeah, especially when you get into more into like the division charts and Vedic astrology. It's a whole bunch of stuff that can come from it. So yes, y'all, I just wanted to do this part 2 with y'all. I'm gonna be doing part 3 tomorrow, right? We're gonna be discussing more about family relationships, right, and how these certain transits could mess up certain stuff, even with the actual family. So yes, y'all, but listen, like I said, come and follow my YouTube channel right here. Y'all already know. Listen, y'all see, I got 5 content. I listen. I like to hone in on whatever I'm talking about, and make sure you all really understand. So I like to really dig deep and get really, really surgical and technical with it, right? But other than that, y'all, listen, y'all have a good rest of y'all day, and I will talk to y'all later. And peace.